Welcome to my second video. Today we're going to set up my blue Alpine large freeze dryer. Your first few steps we need to go through, I'm just going to show you where to plug it in, where the power lines are. When you're setting it up, first thing you need to do is make sure you've got a flat surface to put it on. In my case, I've got it on a stainless steel table that is on a flat floor, so it should be flat. Next thing you need to do is plug in the power. When you're plugging it in, you need to make sure that you're using a dedicated circuit breaker that nothing else is plugged into, and it's a 20 amp circuit breaker. The large freeze dryer does draw about 17 amps and it runs at about 13. So because it draws a maximum of 17 amps when it first kicks on while it's running the refrigerant and the pump, you do need to have it plugged into a 20 amp circuit breaker, and one that you're not running other items on. So I will basically show you where the power plug is. When you start, you need to make sure the power switch is turned off on both the freeze dryer and the pump, and then later on, after you fill the pump, you will test it to make sure that the switch is turned on, and then you're going to plug it into the side switch, the switch located on the side of the freeze dryer. So let's go through and look at the different parts. This is the back of the freeze dryer, and in the lower left-hand corner, as you're looking at the back, you'll find a power supply and an on-off switch. This is where you plug the power supply. The power cable for the freeze dryer gets plugged in here, and let's see. Nope. Okay. So that plugs into the back, and right now we need to make sure it's in the off position, which it is, and then later on we will turn it into the on position when it's ready to run. So that will get plugged into this switch here, which I had recently had installed, and that is a dedicated 20 amp circuit for this freeze dryer. So that's where that'll go. Next thing you want to do is add oil to the pump. And to add the oil to the pump, you just need to take off the filter up here, air filter. I would also double check to make sure that the drain plug is snug and tight so that the oil doesn't leak out of there. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to fill the oil. You dump the oil in there until the oil level reaches the center of that view window. Do not add the oil too quickly. It takes a little while for it to fill up the tank, so if you pour it too fast it might spill over the top but not be all the way in. So just pour it in slow enough that you can actually see it coming up the window. And once that oil is filled, then we'll move to the next step. So that's what I'll be doing now. So just pour the oil in slowly like this, and this will take about 1.5 pints. They gave us 2 pints to begin with, and this oil should take about 1.5 of these bottles to fill the tank to the right level. So just keep filling it till you see it move up on that window, and once you see it showing up in the window, you know that it's basically full, but you don't want to overfill it. So there are marks on the window that tells you how high to make it, and if you just take your time, it'll fill up. Okay, now it's showing up in the window, so if you see it down in the window there, you can kind of see it filling up in the window. And so I'll just fill it. I'm going to slow down now in case it runs over there a bit more, and it looks like it's running down the side, so we're just about right in the middle of the lines there, so touch a bit more. So just fill it up until you get in between the markers there. I might have overfilled it just a touch, but I think I'm all right between the lines. You can see the markers on the side, minimum and max, so I'm clearly in the middle there, so that should work. So that's the oil fill. The next thing you want to do after you fill the oil is you want to connect the air line to it, or the vacuum line from the freeze dryer. So to do that, you take this little brass clip off here, slide it over the end of the hose, put the hose back over. Let's slide that up a little further. Kind of hard to do that with one hand while I'm holding my camera, but slide that over the top, and then tighten this back down and screw it in until it tightens back into those threads, and that should connect and tighten that vacuum line to the vacuum line. So tighten that down until it stops. There we go. I think that's tight. Okay, and let's put the filter back on so I don't get any dirt inside the pump. Put the piece there, and there's 2 more things we need to do. Just kind of snug that up, don't put it too tight. 2 more things we need to do to have the pump ready. Let me show you those. So one thing you need to do is make sure that we're in the off position. Second thing you need to do is tighten this little release knob down all the way. Once it's fully tightened, so it's closed, you need to open it 1 to 4 full turns. So this is half turn, that's 1 turn, 1.5, 2. It says between 1 and 4 turns. If you run that either fully closed or fully open, you could damage the pump quicker. It doesn't make as good a vacuum if it's fully closed. They suggest 1 to 4, tighten it all the way down, and then undo it 1 to 4 times. So that's 1 time. I'm gonna go with 1.5. It feels pretty loose at that. So about 1.5. Run that open like that, and then I'll see how it vacuums. I might need to open a bit more when I'm doing that. Second thing you need to do is plug the power cord back into the back of the freeze dryer. Yep. Second thing you do is plug the power cord back into the back of it, making sure the switch is still in the off position. And this one, instead of plugging it into the outlet on the wall, you're going to plug this one into the outlet on the side, on the right hand side of the freeze dryer. So down here, we'll plug that in there, and that way it can be kicked on automatically by the freeze dryer. When it needs it, it will kick the power on to the pump, which will power it up. Now, when you set your pump up, you want to make sure that it is not it's in a place where it's got plenty of room to breathe. There's not it's gonna not be right up against the vents from this hole, because that has to have plenty of air, plenty of room for hot air to blow through there. And this is going to get pretty warm, so you don't want that next to anything either. So I'm basically trying to put mine out here on the table all by itself. I'll probably move it down to the lower table later. Make sure all the cords, everything else is out of its way. Okay, so that is basically all you have to do to hook it up. The last thing you want to check before you try to turn it on is to make sure that your power supply inside your freeze dryer, make sure that the cords are actually still connected. This is what heats the dryer up, and you make sure that the dryer trays have the yellow and gold heat pads on the bottom of the freeze tray, and make sure that they're kind of in their level. So basically make sure it's level, that the power cords are connected, and they're usually stored up on top. Keep them kind of out from the edges, and set that in there. Then once we've done all that, the only other thing we have to do now is turn the power on this pump here. So we turn the pump power on. With the pump on, it shouldn't turn on yet because there's no power going to it from the freeze dryer. The last thing we do is power up the freeze dryer, and that switch is back there. And once we powered it on, you should see the digital screen show up there. So that is the setup. Very straightforward, very easy. It starts nicely, and then I'm going to start doing some candy. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'll make another video of that. But it's really simple to put this thing together. It was just a matter of adding oil to the pump, connecting the pump to the freeze dryer. Before I run it, I need to make sure that we close the vacuum line on the drain line over here. Make sure that is in the closed position. Right now it's open because it won't ever vacuum with that closed. But when you're setting up your machine to run something, the screen will prompt you to make sure the vacuum is closed. Okay, so that is the setup of the large Blue Alpine freeze dryer. Nothing more to it than plugging it in and filling the pump with the right amount of oil and connecting the vacuum line. A couple of last notes: never use an extension cord or it will void your warranty. When operating your freeze dryer, the room temperature should be between 32 and 90 degrees. And it does run at about 60 decibels, so think about that when you're trying to figure out where you're going to set your freeze dryer up in your house. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later.